you can see, you are looking live at U.S. Bank Stadium in downtown Minneapolis, home of the Minnesota Vikings, Cowboys at Vikings. And breaking news, we did touch on this earlier in the week, but you know how the Sunday Splash works, so now we're going to touch on it again. Zach Martin, the all-pro right guard, almost certain future Hall of Famer, who Mike McCarthy a few weeks ago, when we asked him about the idea of moving to tackle, said, that's fantasy football nonsense. Well, it wasn't nonsense then. It hasn't been nonsense this week. It won't be nonsense today as the Dallas Cowboys take on the Vikings. Zach Martin is a tackle today. We talked about this earlier in the week. The Thursday practice revealed Zach Martin doing a lot of work at right tackle. We discussed that at the time. We discussed young Connor McGovern getting a lot of work at right guard, and that concept coming to fruition today for the Cowboys. It makes so much sense and always has. And with all due respect to Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy and the idea of moving players around being fantasy football, number one, tackles don't play fantasy football. I've played fantasy football for 31 years. I never decided to put a tackle or a guard in the lineup. And number two, there's a long history, certainly in Dallas, but elsewhere too, of, hey, let's play our best five. And if Connor McGovern is a better player than Terrence Steele, and he can't be that much worse, then let's play our best five. And since Connor McGovern is a guard and not a tackle, and since Zach Martin is one of the best athletes in football, even at 6'5", 290 or whatever, he's a very athletic, very gifted offensive lineman. Let's put him at some other position. And you watch today, Zach Martin, just like he dominates at guard, might be the Cowboys' best player. He has a good chance of dominating at tackle today. The best five offensive linemen is a concept that we've talked about and written about in Dallas going back 30 years, when that Jimmy Johnson and then the offensive line coach Tony Wise, in that era, you had Mark Stepnoski at center, and then everybody else was interchangeable. And Nate Newton could play guard, tackle, and did. And Kevin Gogan came off the bench to play guard, tackle. When Mark Stepnoski was injured, I think it was the first Super Bowl of that time, they went to John Giesick and said, can you play center? He said, yeah, I guess so. So John Giesick was the starting center in that Super Bowl. And people forget about that because it went so smoothly and nobody barely noticed. Larry Allen was a guard or a tackle. Didn't make any difference to him. Just tell me who to smash. Eric Williams could play, obviously, multiple tackle spots. Mark Tuinei played left tackle, but was a converted defensive tackle. Ron Stone, a little bit later in that era, could play multiple positions. Who am I leaving out? Anybody? And so, Alan Weingrad could play multiple positions coming off the bench, and on and on and on. And so the idea was, let's get our best five offensive linemen, find one of them who can put the ball up between his legs, and that's our offensive line. And you want continuity, and McCarthy talks a lot about continuity. Well, you get continuity over the course of a week. You don't need, especially not with this team injured as it is. The idea of we're going to have constant, everyday continuity for 7 months in the offensive line is preposterous. You're never going to have that. And you certainly don't have that with this group, with the two starting tackles. Again, another future Hall of Famer in Tyron Smith at left tackle, unavailable for the year. And then hip surgery for the very good right tackle in Lyle Collins. So those two things right there, that ended continuity. Now let's try to find a way to win a game. And Zach Martin is arguably your best player. Tackle is more important than guard. Left tackle, by the way, is more important than right tackle. If he wants to snap his fingers and say, put me at left tackle, Zach Martin can do that as well. Obviously, there's a little difference with hand placement and angles and all the rest. So a guy who's been a right guard his whole pro career, let's keep him on the right side, that's just fine. And then Cam Irving, who has, again, he hasn't been very good here, But he's got skins on the wall as a starting tackle in the NFL, formerly, of course, with the Chiefs. So there's not an excuse for this offensive line. These are guys that you valued in the draft. In the case of Connor Williams, who again hasn't been particularly good, but he was the 50th overall player taken in his draft. And then Connor McGovern, I think they once said they had a second round grade on. Does that sound right? And just to use Stephen Jones's phrase, that it was just red lights flashing. We get to the third round or whatever it was, we can't not take him. We got a second round grade on him. He's just going to be that good. That was another coaching staff's concept, but it still was this personnel department's concept that Connor and Connor were good players. And so this coaching staff now gives McGovern really his first legitimate crack at proving that the previous coaching administration and that this same personnel group is right. So the Connor McGovern issue at right guard is really the test. I'm sure you'll agree with me. There's no question that Zach Martin is going to pass the test at right tackle. And then the question as it relates to going out and winning a football game, can Connor McGovern pass the test at right guard? We're also told, speaking of more illness and not so much injury and not so much news, news in terms of moving people around. On the defensive side, our understanding is 2 defensive ends that have dealt with illnesses all week long. That's DeMarcus Lawrence and Randy Gregory, both expected to go today in a 3:25 start here in Minnesota. As we've discussed at length, you want to try to stop Minnesota and Dalvin Cook, you're going to need all hands on deck on defense. Randy Gregory, obviously not exactly a run-stopping guy, but Tank Lawrence is. And Tank Lawrence is a do-it-all defensive end who is not having a spectacular season in terms of sacks with 3. Randy Gregory hadn't exactly racked up sacks either, but he's certainly capable of it. Some of that obviously dictated by game score and game script. In the case of Tank Lawrence, a lot of it dictated by the fact that he's got what we'll call a bulky knee that keeps him from being all the things that he wants to be, but doesn't keep him from participating and contributing, and maybe against Dalvin Cook, stopping the run. So to recap, and again, I appreciate you joining us here, subscribing, watching, and telling your friends. Thank you very much. And listening to our work at Fish Sports and 105.3 The Fan and Sports Illustrated as well. The biggest news of the day is that, as we noted earlier in the week, Zach Martin, it's not fantasy football to put him at tackle. He will be the right tackle of record today against the Vikings. By the way, he's got a little bit of a nagging calf, but by Friday, he was pretty much full at practice, so not a problem there. Although Wednesday and Thursday, he spent a lot of time on the courts. And then on the defensive side, close to all hands on deck. Chido Awuzie is healthy. Of course, he'll start at cornerback. And then 2 very helpful defensive ends, along with Aldon Smith, who leads the team in sacks. Aldon Smith, obviously available. And then what we believe is really good news on Randy Gregory and an illness that Coach McCarthy said was not COVID related, or at least he suggested that. And we're gonna work on that belief. And then maybe a little flu bug going around in the defensive line room, as DeMarcus Lawrence, the Pro Bowl defensive end, also available today. None of that, I don't think, changes the point spread issue here. This is still Minnesota by 7.5 or whatever. Vikings have won 3 straight games, aiming for a 4th and favored to do it. This will be an empty building today, as you can see. And I'm speaking literally when I say there aren't 6 of us here in the building today, but you know how we are. We like to get an early start, and we appreciate you getting an early start with us. So point spread wise and the chances of winning, the opportunity to win, I don't know that changes substantially with the Zach Martin issue. Maybe it will. Maybe he'll make a gigantic difference at right tackle, and maybe they'll discover something in Connor McGovern at right guard. But yeah, difference-making news on defense. If you don't have Tank Lawrence, you're down substantially. If you don't have Randy Gregory, who can certainly get after the quarterback and has come very close to putting up some numbers defensively, close to hurries, close to pressures, close to sacks, close to quarterback hits. He's capable of doing that today in the in the Cowboys' vision and getting after Kirk Cousins, who, of course, as we've discussed here in the past, gets beaten up a lot, mostly because of his money. But he can make all the throws. He needs protection from this offensive line in Minnesota, which is not a great one, just good enough to get Dalvin Cook the quite possibly NFL rushing championship, but not necessarily good enough to keep Tank and Randy Gregory off the quarterback's back. So there's your 4 guys to watch. Obviously, Dalvin Cook is a key, and Ezekiel Elliott is a key, but we're going to keep an eye today on Randy Gregory and Tank Lawrence on defense, and on Connor McGovern starting at right guard, we believe, and Zach Martin finishing up his week of work at right tackle by doing the same thing here in Minnesota. Fish out.